All right, thank you so much for joining me today, gentlemen. Thank you, Piyush. We heard from Ravi earlier on. And in his keynote address, Ravi talked about how skills and jobs, they are really the key focus, not just in Singapore, but across the globe, right? And in the context of a financial services sector, Ravi touched on the job opportunities amidst COVID-19. And he also made mention of how IBS and MAS are working very closely with Singaporeans to help them upskill so as to preserve jobs and build new capabilities. And MD also mentioned how we need to foster more readiness in our undergraduates as part of a longer term strategy to build up our Singaporean talent pipeline for this particular sector. So let's get the ball rolling. And I'd like to invite each of our panelists to give me a 5-minute overview of your thoughts and experience across the 3 themes of job opportunities, job retention, and job readiness. And I'd like to invite Piyush to get us started.
Thank you, Yvonne. So I want to really make 4 points to kick off this discussion. The first point is simply this. This is not the first time in human history that this kind of job displacement and need for reskilling has happened. If you think back to the Industrial Revolution, the changes that we saw 150 years ago were in some ways even more profound and impactful than the changes we see today. The steam engine, the telegraph, the assembly line, the telephone, everything happened in a period of 20, 30 years. And jobs disappeared. The stagecoach driver disappeared. You got replaced with an engine driver. And over the years, jobs disappeared. I remember when I started banking, you had a stenographer who took shorthand and then she gave the note to somebody, the typist who typed it up and then sent it down to the cable department for the telegraph operator to send a telegraph or a telex. Well, none of the jobs exist. It's been, 30 years. So my first message is this, that this is not the first time it's happened. This is the course of human history. Jobs disappear with technology changes, but jobs get created. The reality is more jobs got created in this period of time than ever existed in the past. So we need to have the faith and the confidence that the jobs are there, jobs will come. It has happened before, and we can see the path through this one more time. The second point I want to make is this. In some ways, we are privileged to be living at a time where rigid industry boundaries are disappearing. Mark Andreessen, the well-known Silicon Valley venture capitalist, put it well. He said software is eating every industry. And that is true. The hard boundaries between I am in aerospace or I'm in hospitality or I'm in banking or I'm in financial services are disappearing because technology is making the whole playing field a lot more level. So skills are a lot more transferable. There is no ICT industry. Every industry is ICT. And the skills you need in digital marketing in Lazada are not different from the skills that you need in digital marketing at DBS. So the reality is the disappearance of industry boundaries creates tremendous opportunity for lateral movement, an opportunity that we did not realize or see before. The third point I want to make is this, that one of the other attendant outcomes of technology is that organization models are changing. So today we saw that this year, particularly in spades. But the organization and the workforce of the future will be different in 4 or 5 important ways. Number one, you will see a distributed workforce. And by that, we really mean that everybody doesn't have to be in the same building. You can be working in different locations, including from home. And that has profound consequences on the kinds of jobs you can do and the kind of roles you can aspire to. Second, we will have a more flexible workforce. And the flexibility will also give opportunities for doing, and today you've seen gig economy jobs. That's an evidence of flexibility, but they don't have to be gig economy. Flexible jobs give you a lot more opportunity to do different kinds of things. Third, you will see a lot more horizontal organizations. We already spoke about that across industry, but even within companies, instead of departments, you will see a lot more horizontal and agile workforce opportunities. Fourth, you will see organizations which are a lot more data-driven. So you will see opportunities and jobs in the back of that. What does it mean to have a data-driven operating model? And finally, you will see a lot more reliance on ecosystems and partnerships. And that has implication for jobs in organizational context as well. So that's the third thing. Organizations are going to change. And my fourth point is this, that I'm not convinced that irrespective of how old you are or how young you are, we can learn and acquire new skills. And my best and most vivid example of that is really take the mobile phone, a smartphone of anybody, whether you're 50 years old or 60 or 70, and you look at the apps on your phone and you realize that you're doing things today that you never did 5 years ago. So the human mind is very versatile, very flexible. It can adapt to change. We need to create the conditions and we need to give a helping hand to the workforce to be able to embrace that change. But change we must. And my last message, I guess, is linked to that. Finally, it's up to each one of us to have the confidence to take a risk and to try. And if you're willing to do that, I think we can transition into this workforce of the future quite systematically and at scale. So why don't I stop there now?
Thank you, Piyush. Indeed, transitioning to the workforce of the future where boundaries are clearly disappearing, jobs are going to change, but it's all about having the right mindset and willingness to take on those new jobs. Thank you, Piyush. Dennis, let's hear from you.
My personal thanks to MAS and IBF for having me this morning to share this on this topic. I think ultimately people remains the most important in any organization for it to be sustainable. And from a Prudential perspective, despite all the technological advances, the foundation of our success really lies on our focus and investment on our people. So I think that is a really, really key thing that I think we see that across the entire industry as well. So because of that, we have been focusing a lot on upskilling and reskilling our employees to really meet the ever-growing, changing demands of our customer base in terms of wanting things more flexible, a lot faster. And the way we think about reskilling and upskilling is actually the focus on the concept of continuous learning. Continuous learning is totally key. And from an insurer perspective, we look at it in a two-pronged approach. Continuous learning for our corporate employees, as well as continuous learning for our distributors, the large agency force. And yes, it has been a challenging year this year, given the pandemic. But I think importantly, we have pivoted. And in fact, we see that the whole agenda on continuous learning and learning in general has not derailed. In fact, it has grown so much more. So when we look at the data year on year, we have literally almost doubled in terms of the investments into time, and all of our corporate employees looking at all the different modules that they have been able to spend time learning. So two things that came out from our data is this, right? AI in finance, as well as in terms of machine learning for humans. These are all very, very popular causes for many of our employees, and especially from the second quarter circuit breaker period, whereby a lot of people in that sense were locked down. So a lot of department heads and people were actually focusing on getting employees to really go through this, to really understand new technologies and digitalization and how that will actually affect the world. And we didn't cap that went across all ages in terms of our employees that subscribe to the program, across all departments and job roles. And we feel that importantly, for these people coming from different departments, understanding this concept will help them and spur them on and motivate them to do a lot more in their own roles, in their own projects that they're doing. So I think that was one thing very good. The other one is actually in terms of training the agency force. For an insurer like us with a large agency force, the entire continuous professionalizing of the capabilities of the sales force is important. And I'm very heartened to hear the announcement this morning from the MAS in terms of the extension of the training allowance grant. That is something that we will continue to focus on. And in fact, with that extension of the 6 months, we are able to get more people through this program. And my commitment and intent is to get another 1,000 of our frontline staff to be able to maximize and upskill and retrain. And finally, in terms of job opportunities from an insurer perspective, I guess the whole focus on digitization and digitalization, that offers enormous opportunities for us as an insurer. Traditionally, we've been focusing a lot more on claims and providing the coverage for our policyholders, and that remains so. But I think the important next step for us is to really partner the policyholders in looking at overall health and well-being. Because ultimately, if the policyholders are healthy, the nation will be healthy. And from our perspective as an insurer, as a business, the business also will be healthy because claims will be gradually coming down. So from that perspective, there will be lots of growth opportunities within the company and within the sector in terms of jobs available for digital, and that is something that we will focus on. And finally, I think importantly for us as one of the oldest insurer in town, we have been here for some time, and we will be here for the long haul. So importantly, looking into the national agenda and literally playing our part to grow timber to fuel the growth of the insurance sector, that is something that I think is really exciting.
Awesome, Dennis. Thank you for giving us that overview. And it's great to know, too, that Prudential really made use of the downtime, during the pandemic to upskill your employees. You mentioned this two-pronged approach to continuous learning. I want to get more into that detail later on, so hold that thought. But thank you for that. Patrick, the floor is now yours. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ravi and Nansen, for having Standard Chartered today to participate in this panel. For us at Standard Chartered, we look at learning, training as from an end-to-end perspective, and picking up on Piyush's points and Dennis's points about the transformation that is happening in our financial services industry and across our economies on a global level through digitalization, through the pandemic impact. I think it's really important that I think we have a very holistic view as to how we really nurture and grow our talent force from end to end through the whole career cycle. And so we see it very much from an end-to-end basis. It's so important because at the end of the day, as a bank, a financial services practitioner, what are our assets? Our assets, we have financial assets, we have assets, liabilities, but our real assets are our people. Without our people to manage, to have the trust from our clients, we will not have a flourishing industry, a flourishing forest to really grow and participate and support. So for us at Standard Chartered, I like to look at it from the perspective of how we help our people through the career cycle. Clearly, there's the beginning of the career journey where we're very much involved in recruiting people from universities, graduates, but we also need to look at things a little bit differently. So participation in the work-study programs is very important as capabilities change. I think we all know that learning and graduate programs are changing very rapidly because learning now is more of a continuum through one's career as opposed to having a degree and then sticking with that for the rest of your career. We're very interested in partnering with the government as well on the SGUT programs that are in place. So these are all aspects at the onset in terms of helping people at the beginning of their careers. And the really important part of it is really how do we help our people through their careers, through on-the-job training, on-the-job redeployment, as we see all the transformational changes coming through, impacting our bank, impacting the way we do business, impacting the way we interact with our customers. And that's so important that we really need to dial up the investment. And as a bank, and I think there's a whole industry with the support of the government and MAS here, we've all been doing this. So we've also upped our investments into reskilling, retraining, and we do that through a number of different programs. We have our own bespoke skills future program, which we invested $2 million. We've just increased that by another $3 million, where we put about a couple of thousand of our people through ongoing training programs. This year, with the downtime that we saw through circuit breaker, we upped the ante on our PCP programs, professional conversion programs. We put 250 people through who weren't able to go to the branches, weren't able to do some of the basic work that they needed to through circuit breaker. So we said, let's take the time, use it wisely to help upskill, get them ready for some of the changes that are coming through the industry. We have had some successful participation in the TFIT programs, and there again, it's about helping people come from different backgrounds who have a desire to go into the new areas of growth. For example, we had somebody coming from the construction industry, and they were successfully onboarded through TFIT as a cyber specialist in the bank. So these are other approaches that we need to look at to really grow. And then I guess finally, we also are very mindful of people at the later part of their career cycle, people who are closer to retirement, alumni of the bank. So there we also have specific dedicated programs to help with the silvers. We have a silver program to help retrain, reskill, help people through the tail end of their careers continue to be productive, continue to pick up new skills, as well as looking for people who might want to come back to the bank. We're very proud to say that 20% of our workforce are alumni who have left the bank and then come back tech, and we will also have programs to help them participate, reskill. So all in all, we see this very much as a life cycle where we need to support people through the journey, and we're very aligned to the government initiatives, and we know that this is a challenging time, but at the same time, I think we take comfort that we're very fortunate that financial services, we believe, is still a growth industry in Singapore. We have fantastic support. We have a fantastic ecosystem working with the government partners and agencies, and working with our people, because the future is bright in this area. We know financial services will continue to be a requirement, but it is shifting very rapidly in terms of the way it's practiced, the way it's done, more digital, more different ways of working, and we need to help our people get through that. And with the right programs, with the right effort, I'm very confident we can do that.
Thank you, Patrick. Indeed, I think the future is very bright for the financial services industry. You had a worker who came from construction and is now a cyber analyst within the bank. How cool is that transformation? And it's great that you guys have so many programs available for alumni too, because I'm someone who has left the banking industry. Who knows, and I want to come back. So you're telling me that there are programs available. Thank you very much. Piyush, looking at you too, maybe you have some of these. Okay, we'll get to that later. Namsen, I want to hear from you now. You've heard from Dennis, Piyush, as well as Patrick. IBF has been very consistent, together with MAS, driving the message of jobs and skills. Perhaps give us some of your thoughts of what our panelists have shared this morning.
Sure, thank you. Yeah. So over the past few years, we have been working very closely with our partners, financial institutions, on workforce transformation and developing our talent pipeline, especially for the technology areas. So we often ask the question, why is this urgency to reskill our workers? Anyway, we have coped so-called well with the internet revolution, PC revolutions. So I want to make 2 points here. One is that the technology cycle is getting shorter and shorter. So it took the personal computers 14 years, 14 to reach 15 million users. So if we use 15 million users as the critical mass. The internet took 7 years. The Facebook 3 years. WeChat 1 year. Pokemon Go 7 days. Right. So the lead time to retrain our workers is getting shorter and shorter. With COVID pandemic, the adoption of technology is even faster. So we have to move even faster. Secondly, the scale of the technology impact is widespread. So it impacts the banks, not just the back office, but front office and the mid office, impacts our life. So we can expect a person's job to be disrupted more than once in his career journey. So having said that, technology impact can also be opportunities for our professionals. History has shown us that any revolution, be it PC, internet, has always led to net job increases. So the strategy is to make sure that our workers, our professionals are right skilled for the job opportunities. Otherwise, will become irrelevant, so to say. So therein lies the so-called the challenge that we need to reskill our workers in time and the right time for the right opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Namsen. So we should all, most workers should prepare themselves for at least 2 disruptions in their career, right? At the bare minimum. I mean, it's the same message that's going around today, that we have to be ready for change, for disruptions and boundaries that are disappearing. So I want to move on into more detail about each of the 3 themes right now. And I'd like to talk about job opportunities. I want to, throw that question to Piyush again, and then I invite the rest of our panelists to chime in. So earlier this year, DBS said that you won't have any retrenchments exercise, and you are ready to hire over 2,000 people in Singapore. Where do these job opportunities lie in DBS, Piyush, and how is the bank supporting mid-career workers to pivot to these new roles, bearing in mind that they may not have the full suite of skills and experience for the job?
So I knew you would ask that question.
It was in my face, right? You know I was going to ask you the difficult question.
I HR people to tell me how many we had. And so very happy to report that end of October, we actually had 2,045.
Already? Wow.
Already. Of which about 700 are young grads. So when we deal with some of the government programs and so on. But the balance, 1,200, 1,300, are really mid-careers. We've hired them. A lot of them are from banking. But we increasingly hired people from all kinds of industries.
Okay.
Broad range. In fact, this is well reported, like some of the banks, we've been hiring a lot of people from Singapore Airlines, for example, the cabin crew. But what really intrigued me normally, 10 years ago, I hired cabin crew to be service ambassadors. Now we hired cabin crew to be wealth planning managers. Because we found that actually we could create a path to take a cabin crew and build them into a wealth planning manager. So it's very unusual to think about a cabin crew becoming a wealth planning manager. But that's not all. So I saw about 250 different, fairly intriguing people from different industries. We hired somebody who's a security officer, and have taken and grown the person now to also being a completely different profile in the consumer business and grow. The real thing that I sort of went out over the last 3 years, we've hired upwards of, well, first of all, without like everybody else, we've been hiring a lot of engineering staff. So today, out of our total workforce of 30,000 odd, about a quarter of it are engineering staff, which means software development, programmers, technical engineering. It's quite unusual because banks, this is our biggest population today, engineers. You never expect banks to be engineers. You hire bankers, but today we hire engineers.
That's right.
But a lot of people then get scared, I don't have computer skills, don't have software. So I went and actually studied again. We've also hired another 2,000 plus people who have nothing to do with hardcore technical engineering skills. And I found that essentially we created 23 big categories of roles today, which did not exist in the bank 5 years ago. And they're across a whole range, the customer experience people, design people. We had 100 people design department in the bank, and none of these people know nothing about banking or technology, but they're designers.
What do they design?
The design, we started first with designing our online properties.
Ah, okay.
Because you got to understand what is the customer experience. Where if you want to go to a Google site, why is the Google site compelling? And how do you actually take that learning and translate it to your properties? But then we realized that the design extends to the offline world as well. So we now think about our physical interaction with customers at the branches, at our thing. You take the same design principle. So 100 people design department.
Wow.
Right? And this thing. So I was trying to hire somebody from a design firm from the US, and they said our design department is bigger than the whole consulting firm. We didn't have these jobs 5 years ago. Right?
In a mere 5 years.
Data, big. So it's data, you don't need to be a statistician. It helps, but you need insight. So in the data group, we actually wind up hiring a lot of people with ethnographic and anthropological background. So you can get insights from data. Right? Cyber, obviously, we've done 700 journeys over the last few years. And so you need journey managers. The journey is a horizontal way of saying, how does the customer experience map from the beginning to the end? Right? So it's a completely different job profile. Agile organization managers, Scrum masters. Again, did not have anything like that before. Innovation, and particularly ecosystem innovation partners. So we've got a whole entity up in Fusionopolis where we've something called a startup exchange. We work with startups. I need a coordinator to manage the working with startups. I need somebody to try and figure out how do you take our internal businesses and get them to work with startups. We have 6 people only doing that, connecting with the ecosystem and startups. Didn't have those jobs before. Digital marketing. So a large part today, 40% of our new to bank is coming through digital marketing sources, but they need new skills. So the range of jobs we've been able to create in the last 3 years is very, very diverse, and in roles that did not ever exist in the past, right? And so that's the first key thing. The second I referred to briefly in my opening comments. We're finding as a consequence that we can hire people from very unorthodox industries. Right? We need digital learning. You know who's the best at digital learning? LinkedIn. So if I had somebody from LinkedIn, they're very good. This time I don't need a banker. We need people who know how to run experimentation at scale. A/B testing, where you know who's the best at it? Somebody who's worked with Netflix, right? And so on. So we have to look for completely different sources of talent when you come in. And the third point we also made earlier about organizations are changing. So some of the stuff people will need in this new organizational construct. So we found in the last 6 months, when everybody is working from home, I call it a distributed workforce. The job we created, we need somebody who is an energy manager. Because when you're working from home, everybody's online. How do you keep people's motivation and energy up?
So it's like a rah-rah guy.
Yeah, so there's something, but you've got to think. This is not just a rah-rah. You've got to think about what programs do I run in a virtual world to keep people's energy up. We're talking about flexible workforce. So you've got part-time job sharing, etc. I need people who can coordinate that. Right, so we have AI tools, but then on top of that, we need the AI tool manager to say, who should work when, how do you allocate work, how do you distribute work. You never needed those kinds of jobs before. So the change in the organization itself is creating new kinds of opportunities for us. So it's been quite broad, which is why I said 2,000. I think we'll probably get to 100 plus jobs by the end of the new jobs that we're hiring for this year. And I see that pace continuing in terms of new jobs.
Yeah, you preempted my next question because I was going to say, if you've already hired over 2,000 and you are planning to hire more, so journey managers and energy managers, guys, I hope you're listening out there. If you think you've got the energy to rah-rah your team, DBS is the place that we're looking for.
But the other thing I should have said, you said there'll be at least 2 disruptions. Frankly, I think it's going to be continuous and constant disruptions. Mm-hmm. However, we're very happy to hire staying ex-bankers. People who started their life in the right place and then went off into the wrong industry. We have an opportunity for you too.
Also, there's an answer to that. Thank you. Wrong industry. Oh gosh. Thank you, Piers. Dennis, Prudential, you recently announced you're planning to hire up to 500 financial consultants or FCs in the new year, of which 200 will be mid-career workers. The bank is also, Prudential has also invested $1 million in talent management just to help these mid-career workers groom them in financial advisory. Is this an opportunity for them to reinvent their careers?
So absolutely. I think we're looking at it, not just looking at fresh graduates, but importantly, people with some existing skills in other industries to come along. But how do we actually, in a systematic way, help them gear up towards that? So it's actually a very structured 2-year program that we have for these mid-career hires coming in, and they will be consultants, right? They will be joining us as consultants managing customers. But in the 2-year program, upfronted in the first year is very heavy technical hard skills as well as soft skill training. So product, right? Understanding customers, customer journey, how do you do financial planning with customers? But importantly, also the soft aspects in terms of communication skills. How do you connect with customers? And that will be actually supported very well with mentorship as well. So not just individuals coming in and just going through the program, but having that community, having the supervisors, having the peers and the buddies to really help them along. I think that is really important to gain the confidence and having these people coming in. And of course, they will be using skills that they had from previously, right, from the previous industry to bring in and bring that fresh perspective as they interact with the customers. So we're really excited to have this program and to roll it out going into next year, having this incremental 500 more financial consultants.
Excellent. I think having a mentorship is very important when you're scaling through a big organization, and that is something that I do miss. So if I were to come back and go back to that point again, Namsen, just very quickly, IBF was recently appointed by the National Jobs Council as a jobs development partner, right? All this type of mentorship, jobs development partner for the financial services sector. How has that changed the way IBF does things in the context of what Ravi shared earlier?
Right. So we take that role very seriously, and we're quite excited about the things that we want to do. So to do this job well, we also want to leverage data. So I think my chairman mentioned that MAS and IBF will do a joint employment outlook survey. So that data will help us tremendously. So a few points I'd like to mention. One is that with the data, we can engage the FIs preemptively and proactively. We will be able to see hiring data as well as potential job losses data. So through this, we hope to work with the bank to see whether we can do reskilling and redeployment within the same organization, so to say. So we have done this PCP program. I think my MD has mentioned PCP program. I think fairly well for the consumer operations area. But these are for roles impacted by technology. Potentially, we can expand this to include other roles. So we want to be able to, work with the banks using the data to say, instead of laying off these staff, can we reskill them and then redeploy them in growth roles, especially useful for mid-career staff. Okay, so this is one. As you know, chiming in on what PU said about cross-sector deployment, we have successes in what we call new hires PCP, where the bank takes professionals from non-finance sector and deploy them into their organization, which is finance. Examples of banks taking marine engineers, aerospace engineers to do compliance in the bank. So it is possible. We need to see how to scale up, how to design the right pathways to actually do this. So that is one. Secondly is to curate new training pathways. Job matching, if you look at one-to-one job matching, there's no market failure, right? The market is able to match. If you are a trade finance person, you want to find another trade finance job, there's no market failure. So IBF and MAS value add really is to come in to talk to the bank and say, if you're looking for a perfect match, it's going to be tough, right? But are you prepared to so-called work with us to curate a learning pathway to take someone who may not have a perfect match, but prepared to co-invest in training the person to the ultimate destination role that you need. So again, we have experimented this with technology roles, which is a high growth areas under a TFIP program, which my MD mentioned. TFIP stands for Technology in Finance Immersion Program. We take in candidates who are from non-finance sector mainly, with some STEM background, science, technology, engineering, maths background. Put them through a structured training together with on-the-job training over 2 years. They will be trained in areas like AI, cloud computing, data analytics, full stack development. 2 years, they will have a sound grounding. They are not deep tech experts yet, but that will put them on the path to developing skills further on. So the program has gone on quite well. We launched phase 2. Currently, we have about close to 300 candidates attached to the various banks. Our partner banks here are all participants. Some of them has been offered full-time jobs. So again, we hope to expand that, by designing new training and new training pathways. So potentially, we can use the same model for other areas. So ESG, for example, is a growth area. Non-tech, but a high growth area. Light tech areas, UX, UI design, digital marketing, which Piyush mentioned. Third area is, interestingly, we have IBF, we have, every year we award fellowship, distinguished fellows, fellows of IBF, our colleagues here are IBF fellows, but there are ex-bankers or bankers who are also certified coaches. Right? So we have co-opted them in to become our adjunct coaches. So IBF started career coaching in 2018. Over the past 2.5 years, we have coached more than 1,500 professionals and job seekers. Data shows us that we have, they have found jobs. So 50% of them have found jobs. But with adjunct coaches who are finance professionals, they will be able to provide more specialized coaching. So I think this is important, especially for mid-career staff.
Yeah.
And the fourth point is we want to create a platform where we can bring hiring organizations to so-called engage with job seekers. So we conducted a virtual career fair in August this year. And this is one where technology looks better than a physical career fair. Right? We have been organizing physical career fair, but the footfall, so-called, is harder. Right? People need to come to a career fair. But with a virtual career fair, we attracted 2,000 over participants. Right, so there's good engagement between job seekers and the hiring banks. Right, so we hope to do more targeted career fairs. The next one, which we are organizing, is at the coming FinTech Festival. We will focus on FinTech and technology, so we encourage job seekers and banks to actually participate. Yeah. So all in all, for individuals, as my MD mentioned, visit the IBF website, sign on. We organize regular webinars, career coaching. We post job opportunities. For the FIs, we encourage you to continue to work with us on workforce transformation and participate in our coming survey.
Thank you, Namsen. So, I mean, that's one of the benefits of disruptions, right? Virtual career fairs where you can attract so much more people there. And I think my biggest takeaway from you there was it is possible, flexible training pathways make it possible for people from different backgrounds to join the financial services industry. I'm very mindful of time, and I just want to quickly move on now to the next theme, which is job retention through upskilling. And I want to quickly ask Patrick, right? Stan Chart investing $5 million in your talent management program and upskilling. You have intensified your skills future at SC program over 3 years now. How's that going, and how can we continue to build on this momentum of upskilling, Patrick?
No, I think it's so important. I think we just got to keep two things: investing, and then also investing not just money for the programs and building those skills, but it's also the human effort, the attention, and building the capabilities around that. So we, for example, we're about to launch, we're excited about this, a Singapore Learning Academy. We call it the Discover Lab, where we have about 7 or 8 different training functions. We're putting them all together, and it'll be a combination of virtual, online, and offline. Mm-hmm. So that building that capability is so important. As Piyush and others mentioned, it's not just the hardware, it's the software and the skills, the trainers. So we're looking for good trainers if you're interested.
Mom, are you listening? Yeah, industry, Mom.
Huge demand. So and we totally recognize the need right now to really accelerate a lot of these programs, the investment, the capabilities, because if anything we've learned through COVID, through the digitalization that we're seeing across all industries, we expect this to intensify in the next few years.
Yeah.
So there has to be a sense of urgency and commitment from all of us to really get behind it.
Yeah, there must be that urgency and commitment from us to want to do that.
So if I can come in.
Yes, please, Piyush.
So I think this idea of how do you scale and train, it's got I guess 2 or 3 important components. One is, Namsen's talking about it. We've got to recognize that today we can unbundle jobs into skills.
Okay.
And if you look at what are the deep-rooted skills of a job, you find that you can actually train and cover some gaps and move them to really unexpected, unrelated jobs. So in 2016, we identified 1,200 jobs we thought were going to disappear by 2019. And we created a unbundling of skills. We actually used the IBF framework for actually the skills framework. We figured what are the skills this person has. So if you're a teller, for example, we know your skills are to do with customers, to do with money, and then we figured what are the kinds of jobs this person could do that the person doesn't imagine and the hiring manager doesn't imagine. So a pathway focused on skills, I think, is very important. And IBF is doing a great job building this future skills accelerator to move from one to the other. That's one. The second is we're going to change the mindset of the hiring managers to be able to take a risk on people who have the skills but not necessarily what is on paper a relevant job experience.
Yeah.
So you've got to work hard at that. But the third, which is most important, I find, is you've got to change the mindset of people. Mm-hmm. So people are scared. They're in the comfort zone. People are scared to make a move. How do you get people to actually start adapting and learning differently?
Yeah, how?
That's the trick. I boiled it down to 2 things. One is adults learn by doing. So classrooms are okay, but you've got to give people an opportunity to get their hands dirty. And the more people get their hands dirty, the more they get over the fear bar. So we run hackathons, we do accelerators, all of these are to give people an opportunity to get their hands dirty. In that pandemic, like Patrick, I wanted to train everybody on machine learning and AI. So we could do the classrooms. But what we wound up doing is we tied up with Amazon. They have something called Amazon Deep Racer, where in a half-a-day session, they teach you how to use AI and machine learning to program a self-autonomous driving car, right? And so it's very simple, they teach you. And once you do that, you can actually race your car on the track. But if you don't have a physical track, you can race it in the virtual track. And it's fun, it's interesting, you get your hands dirty while doing it. We trained almost 2,500 people using Amazon Deep Racer. People will now competed all over Asia with the top positions in Asia DBS people. In the world, out of the top 27 DBS people. Now, the world record holder is DBS. The point is that these are people who would like to pay them, you're going to learn AI and do autonomous drive. They don't believe it.
Yeah.
But by getting your hands dirty, you get over the hump.
And you make it really fun too.
And you make it fun.
Right.
So one is you got to experiment, another is you got to take some risks. So you got to make it easy for people to take some risks. You got to give them some support.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Just one last question to Dennis before we jump to the Q&A. Thank you so much, guys, for sending in your questions. We'll get to them right after this, Dennis, because Piyush talked about machine learning, and I know at Prudential you put 1,300 of your staff through machine learning. So is it a classroom style? What's the feedback like? Tell us your approach.
This is actually our whole focus on continuous learning, and it is actually a very heavy investment, to be honest, right? 30 hours by each employee. Going through this is online. It's online in nature. But importantly, it's not just about going through the entire program and kind of ticking the box that you have done the training. What we have really found out that makes it more effective is coupling that with, to Piyush's point, in terms of hackathons, right? Data hackathons. So it's completing the program and then giving them available opportunities to really get their hands dirty in that sense. In the past, whenever we have hackathons and all that, we tended to see people who are more technical in nature. But having now the broad-based approach, whereby we go through this whole company approach for everyone going through the program, people who sign up for these hackathons now are not necessarily the traditional digital IT guys. It's people from different departments having that confidence now that because they've gone through some of these basics and they're able to come together to solve real-life business problems or customer problems. Yeah. So I think that's the beauty of it.
It's like on-the-job training, real-life simulation. All right, thank you, Dennis. We're going to go to the Q&A now with this top question, most popular question here by WeTech. It says, the government and MAS have been doing a lot to build fresh talents in our industry. However, we do have a mismatch between the attitudes of young Singaporeans and our national effort. For example, most Singaporean candidates who go through the IMAP, the Insurance Management Associate Program, either do not stay long in their companies or the insurance industry. Some want accelerated careers. So what can we do about that? Who would like to take this question first?
Maybe I can take that.
Dennis.
Yeah. So I think the reality is that people are living longer, right? With the advances in medical science, technology, people are living longer. And from our research, we are seeing that people are telling us that they are living through multi-stage life now, right? So it's no longer just a very traditional sense of it in the past whereby you study, work, and then you kind of retire. So people now kind of intermingle study and work, right? You bring work into classrooms, and you bring classroom into work, and you bring fun, right? As you take breaks in between jobs and stuff like that. So I think that's the reality. So the direction going forward of having this multi-stage life is the reality. But how do we then, as a company and as an industry, support these individuals? And it's about, again, dissecting not just these roles, but into skills, and the skills that's translatable from different jobs, right? Things that they can do perhaps currently, but they can take a break and we can support them for taking a break. But eventually when they come back, can they then still take on other kind of roles within the industry? So I think that's something that companies should start thinking a lot more. And I think the reality is this, right? Because everyone definitely will do this multi-stage approach a lot more. So from my perspective, not to fight it, but think of ways to support it. Yeah.
So it comes back to the theme of employers having to unbundle skills and see where it fits best within the organization. Let's take this in the next question from Jermaine Chia. Continuous learning, upskilling, reskilling. These are all processes that require Herculean support from an HR perspective. Coaching, sponsorship, mentoring through this change. You need humans to facilitate this, as I certainly don't want to be coached by an AI chatbot. Not yet, at least. My question to the panel of business leaders is, what is your commitment and investment to bolster your HR function? Piyush.
Well, we spent about $10 million on doing education reskilling, and the HR function actually architects all of it. But it relies both on the tools, the technology tools, as well as on the human interface. So I think the underlying thesis is correct, that you still need a lot of people to handhold and mentorship. But a lot of the handholding and mentorship is not the role of the HR people themselves. Because there are line business managers who are going to absorb the people and handhold and help them. So you've got to create a culture where everybody is part of this continuous learning journey. Right? It's not HR is going to train me. Everybody is going to train. So I think the answer is somewhere in my mind in between. I think digital tools help a lot. Our digital learning programs, we've got hundreds of them, 240 very focused on skills. I don't think you could do this without a digital learning platform academy. So I think that's important. I think AI tools are important in trying to figure where the gaps are and what you want to focus on. I think people are important, as you talked about the mentorship, but they have to be in the business, not necessarily in HR. And HR is important to help orchestrate the end-to-end. And it's a big priority. So we put a lot of money behind it.
Yeah, it's cross-functional effort, isn't it? Patrick, you'd agree?
Yes, no, and I just add that it's a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
It's both the managers, all of us need to get involved and be aware as managers that we need to help our staff reskill, train, be relevant, and also incumbent on our staff as well to also have that right mindset to want to learn, want to understand that things are changing. So you need that meeting of minds, and it's hard work. So we've intensified a lot of our sort of redeployment programs this year. Because we have various efficiency initiatives, and I personally make it a point to get very, very involved working with the HR teams to really map out how we're tracking in terms of those roles that are being affected. What are we doing to map those across to parts of the bank which need new people for new skills, new roles, and it's a lot of continuous effort that all of us have to play an important part in.
Yeah, certainly. I think we've always heard this some grumbling sometimes in organizations where the employee says, HR is sending me for this training. Why do I have to go? So it's about changing that mindset, maybe making it a lot more fun.
But also putting that, I spent 2 months earlier this year reviewing with every business their own workforce transition plans. This is not an HR exercise. This is a leadership exercise. And once you recognize that this is a leadership exercise and leaders have a role to play, then you get a different slant to it. It's not a check the box, HR did it. It is business trying to think about how do we drive this change.
Thank you, Piyush. We're going to take another question from Lukwar, and he says, will there be trainings provided to existing staff of smaller setups? For example, it keeps moving, EAMs instead of banks and insurance companies. Will the trainings be subsidized or made available for FOC, MES, IBF?
Yeah, definitely. We do not discriminate between large FIs or small FIs. So our grants, our incentive applies to any FIs any individual. So since the enhanced scheme that was launched in April this year, training by individuals increased 7 times, and training by FIs increased, I think, close to 15%. And this is only third quarter this year. So the numbers have actually gone up quite substantially. As my MD mentioned, we have upped the training grant to 90%, and IBF provided another 5% training credit. So if you attend a course, 95% of the course fees are subsidized. On top of that, for FIs, every hour that your staff spends on training, there is a training allowance grant of $15, right? So actually it's over subsidized, but that is really to encourage training. But I also echo Piyush's point, right? It is important for the FIs, big and small, to support training in a very structured manner, organized manner. It's not just some organizations have this KPI that you need to train your staff for 2 hours, or two days per year. But it must be driven by your business transformation, and then the workforce transformation comes in, to support your business transformation. So there's a clear pathway how you're going to train your staff so that they are properly deployed into growth areas.
Thank you for that, Namsin. I hope that answers your question, Lukwar. We've got another question from Julia, and it says, MAS and employers can encourage and you can support upskilling with the courses that are available, but how can you get staff to recognize that they themselves need to upskill? Short of saying, you lack this, you're not good enough, you need to go for this training. How can we get them excited about it?
Maybe I can share the perspective from my company. I think importantly is perhaps to create opportunities whereby you have successes and showcase that. So one clear example that I can think of is as an insurer, we do have a lot of systems, technical things at the back end. So in the past, there used to be a team of quality assurance testers, right? People who have to do a lot of testing and all that. But with automation and digitizing the entire process, we can actually then upskill these people to do something a bit different. So testing is actually problem detection. But how can we upskill them to say that that part can be done by automated way, but we upskill these people to now problem solving rather than problem detection. So having that, and we went through and operationalized that for a team of 7. So 7 people visibly kind of moving and upgrading from testers to becoming quality assurance engineers now, or business analysts. I think that propagates the message across the company and makes it visible. And many other people see that, hey, there's actually opportunity and there's an importance of upskilling on a constant basis. And maybe my final point here is that the way we think of upskilling has got to be holistic. So as an organization, it's broad as well as narrow. It's got to be in as well as out. And what do I mean by that is broad-based upskilling for everyone, because certain things with a fast digitizing world, you need to do that. But certain job rates also, certain job roles need to have that narrow approach as well. And the in and out refers to focusing on upskilling our existing employees, but at the same time devising programs to bring in mid-career people from the outside. And as they come in, how do we then have a pathway for them to really get into the roles comfortably? So I think that is a more holistic way of looking at it, and that's something that we employ.
So it's like different degree lenses when it comes to upskilling and also showcasing successes to kind of motivate others that, hey, look at me, look at him now, or something like that.
If I can just add. So in addition, I think showcasing is very important, and I agree with Dennis, role models. But I think you need to operate at both ends of the spectrum. And one end of the spectrum is you got to tap into people's passion and excitement and things that they would like to do. So I'll give an example. We had in our call center, turned out there was a kid who was very good at gaming, online gaming. And because he started figuring how can I use online gaming in remodeling the call center and the call center workforce and put some stuff. And somebody recognized that and we said, okay, why don't you try and see if this works, you can create a new career path for yourself. And he did it. So he's just fantastic, went and created all kinds of gamification and put it. That's his passion. And allowed him to go. But the other end of the spectrum, you have to create a burning platform. So people, you've got to level with people. And you have to make sure people realize that these jobs will not be there 12, 24, 36
or even 5 years.
Now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. My gosh, yes.
And if you're not willing to be honest and level with your people, you bring them a disservice. So you must be honest and tell people, this job won't be there, you better worry about it, because I'm worried for you, you better worry for yourself. And so I think you could operate on both sides.
Level with people. I like that. No mincing of words, right? This is the reality. Get with it. We're going to take another question now from Wendy, and she says, my personal view is that the claim with IBF can be rather tedious, and it deters firms from applying for the grant. There are a lot of forms and portals that we need to go through. How can we make the processes more user-friendly and simple, like a one-stop solution? Namsin.
So firstly, I think I'd like to say that yes, indeed, I think our claim processes has been a bit cumbersome. We want to help FIs and individuals urgently. This was sometime just before the circuit breaker kicks in March. So we launched the program quite urgently. We want to make sure that access to our grant scheme incentive support is made available as soon as possible. So the back office and our mid office need some time to actually catch up. We also didn't expect the interest for people, taking up training to be so large. So indeed, there's a backlog. But we are working with MAS. We're working with our technology partners to try to streamline it. So we appeal to their patience. We have been de-bottlenecking. We're trying to make it simpler. But on the other hand, I would also like to see the understanding that there's a governance part that we need to ensure because of the big volume of individuals seeking claims. We want to make sure that the claims go to the right person. So there's some check that needs to be done. We are learning from or we're working also with our sister agencies at Skills Future, Work for Singapore, on how they process how they process all these claims. So bear with us. We are expediting the process. If your claims has been delayed for too long a time, please give us a call, send us an email, and we'll attend to it.
Thank you, Namsen. Well, you heard it from the man himself. They are making efforts to de-bottleneck the entire process to make it easier for you to do your claims. So thank you for that, Namsen. Before we go to a closing, just very quickly, I want to ask a quick question to Patrick about the internship programs, because you are a pioneer. Standard Chartered's a pioneer in the work study degree program. You've worked with SUSS for the last 3 years now. How's that going? And how are you then, positioning your undergraduate pipeline to position the bank for bigger growth in Singapore?
It's going really well. I think it's something we partnered with IBF as one of the first banks to roll this out. So I'm pleased to report that we've had maybe 37 people go through the program, and of those who have graduated, our conversion rate is about 50%. So in terms of moving to full-time jobs at the bank. And it's a different way of approaching things. People never used to think about doing this in the past. And there was a little bit of stigma, some concerns. But I think we had some really good examples of people going through that. We've had one lady who's come through as a credit analyst, and she's, she managed to work with SUSS. She did 3 to 4 times a week in the bank on the job training. And it worked out well. She landed. She's very happy where she is. And so I think this is different ways of approaching this in terms of not just the universities, but going beyond that as well. Other vocational training programs and things. I think we need to think more broad-minded. The way people learn, the way people approach things is going to change.
Yeah.
And so obviously we have our ongoing traditional programs. We have interns, we have graduates, but I think we look forward to expanding that to new, more avenues as well.
Yeah, so many opportunities there. Thank you, Patrick. And MD, you've been pretty quiet so far, listening to our conversation. I want to direct this question to you then, MD. So MAS-IBF, very consistent. You've been driving the message of jobs and skills across the industry, but as some of the concerns were shared today, that not everybody is equally motivated to take up, the initiative to upskill. So how can we better galvanize our workforce to take part in continuous learning and enhance their employability, Ravi?
Well, I think some of the anxiety I spoke about earlier on that people have about jobs, it's not entirely a bad thing. It's good to have a little bit of anxiety about the future and about your job, whether you're going to be able to sustain your job. So it's a very careful balance. You don't want to panic people, but you also want to let people know that things are changing rapidly and they can see it. Work processes are changing, industry structures are changing, business models are changing. And we've got to continually emphasize that they need to change and adapt and acquire new skills and be flexible and move on to new roles or take on additional tasks in existing jobs. And what we have is still a happy problem, because there is no shortage of opportunities. You look at many other countries facing these challenges, high unemployment, industries that are depressed, entire regions that are depressed, and you don't have prospects for jobs. And you can understand why the middle class in many of these countries feel hopeless. Where is the future going to be?
Yeah.
We are in a very fortunate situation at the heart of a dynamic Asia, thriving economy, and especially the financial sector doing very well. And we've heard so much about the kinds of new jobs that are being created. We've heard it from Dennis, Piyush, and Patrick, all kinds of new jobs. If there is any notion that technology takes away our jobs, I think Singapore and the financial sector here is living proof of job creation because of technology. Look at all those jobs that are being put up by the financial firms, all in technology. Incredible. We just need more. We don't have enough. So this is a happy problem. People need to realize that if I can change and master new skills, be flexible about what I want to do, there is so much out there. And I think that's catching on. I really think it's catching on. But it will take a bit more. And I think when we get over a tipping point and that becomes a predominant ethos, then I think it will catch fire really. So I'm very hopeful.
Catch fire. I like that. Thank you for sharing those words of advice, MD. Very apt, as we also have members of the public who are tuning in via live stream on IBF SG's Facebook page. And so perhaps on that note, I'd like to invite our panelists today to just give us a one-line closing message to individuals out there who may be keen to explore opportunities in the financial services industry where the future looks very bright. Let's start with you, Dennis.
Say beyond qualifications, skills, right? So think skills in terms of a lot of jobs. Actually, we approach it by looking at what's the minimum qualification, paper qualification, experience, relevant experience, but dissect that and do a personal assessment on what skills do I have and what skills are needed on that job and yet evolving skills and how can I bridge that gap. So beyond qualifications, think skills, invest time for you to do that, self-evaluation on your skills.
Self-evaluation on skills. Thank you, Dennis. Piyush.
I just say be adaptive, back yourself, and be willing to take a risk on your career.
Be willing to take a risk on your career. I like that too. And you said level with your employees, right? Like MD said, they need to know. Patrick.
I would just say, just to add to that, think of your potential. I think sometimes we all tend to look at the sort of more narrow lenses about what we're currently doing, our skills, and take a bit of risk and really think about how you can really realize your potential and know that there's so much support in Singapore from the financial services sector for you.
Think about your potential, what you can do, review your potential. Thank you, Patrick. And Namsin?
So jobs is made up by a series of tasks. So my comment is that, at regular intervals, ask yourself how many of these tasks can be done by machines. And if more than 50%, you should reskill.
Thank you so much, Namsin. Thank you. Gentlemen, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. You've shared some really amazing closing remarks and tremendous insights, right? You talk about taking a risk. You talk about dissecting your skills, reviewing your potential, right? And if you need to upskill, you better look at the areas where you need to upskill. And MD, you said the ethos, once we get to that tipping point, this initiative, the motivation to want to upskill, it will just catch fire. And we hope to get to that stage. So thank you, gentlemen. To our audience who are watching, I think our panelists have clearly highlighted where the opportunities are in the financial services sector. And so much is being done to support not only fresh graduates, but also mid-career workers in the form of, the rollout of the internship support scheme, as well as the extension of the training allowance grant for another 6 months. They will help to boost, upskilling efforts, as well as preserve jobs and build new capabilities. But as our guests today have highlighted, it really takes two hands to clap. Job seekers, you need to have the motivation and the courage to step into new roles and develop further in the job, while existing workers also have to have the motivation to want to upskill, build new capabilities, and boost your relevance in this digital age. So once again, thank you so much to our guests, MD Ravi Menon, the MD of MAS and Chairman of IBF, Patrick Lee, the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank Singapore, Menon, the CEO of IBF, Mr. Piyush Gupta, the CEO of DBS Bank, and Mr. Dennis Tan, the CEO of Prudential Singapore. Thank you very much.